Welcome to this week's episode of Where That Baby's Code At, entitled Black Minds Matter, where we'll go on a journey exploring topics that the Black community will benefit from. Today's topic will be about mental health in the Black community. This episode will look at Black mental health and why my mom is upset when all I said is we should go to therapy. From those shady secrets we're told to keep in the family to that pesky lady who keeps asking me questions about my feelings. This episode will make a once taboo topic more digestible. I'll be joined by special guests on each episode, and these special guests have experience in the topics they're discussing. So I will simply be your guide while they lead us in conversation. These guided conversations will be your metaphorical coat as we navigate this cold life. So think of these guided conversations as my attempt at keeping you all warm. Today's special guest will walk us through mental health in the communities and how we can take advantage of services offered. I know her as Kalia. Kalia arrived to Syracuse, New York in 2010, where she graduated from Henniger High School, go Cougars, and later Syracuse University, go Orange, with her undergraduate in psychology. She is currently attending classes for her master's program in clinical social work. She is contributing to the Syracuse City School District's initiative to better include and support our families while they navigate experiences surrounding their children's educational journey. She is dedicated to advocating for and supporting family units. Kalia Major has worked in the Syracuse City School District for the last 6 years, supporting and empowering families to take an active and engaged role in their children's educational journey. She has created events and initiatives that aid families in recognizing this significant power. Outside of her time with families in the Syracuse City School District, Kalia volunteers time supporting and implementing mental health events and initiatives around Syracuse, encouraging the discussion and around the importance of supporting your own mental health. Kalia's research interests consist of the impactful effects of trauma on education and learning of school-age children, along with an interest on how trauma responses are passed down and manifested in family units. So welcome, Kalia. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right on in. So as you know, last episode, well, you might not know, but last episode, we talked about the importance of investing into our local communities. And so this episode, I want to definitely talk about, resources in the local community. But right now, first, I want to highlight mental health resources that we have on a national level. So can you just walk us through some of the resources that you're familiar with that's on the national level?
Of course. So I know that there is, the mental health resources that I'm thinking of off rip is resources that support you when things have gone a little too far and you need a little bit of outside support. I really like to focus on the intervention resources that help support you when you're in the middle of the crisis, as opposed to being over with and done with the crisis and no longer wanting to deal with that. Mm-hmm. There's therapists in Syracuse. There's therapy services in Syracuse that I like to highlight for people to be able to use, and that's Liberty Resources, that's Socofa. I can't think of the actual.
Familiar with the Socofa one though.
Yeah. So there are therapists here in Syracuse, and I try to encourage people to seek therapists. Okay. Mental health resources on a Syracuse level, regional level is what you're asking, or national?
National. So, like the national suicide.
That's the only thing that I'm thinking of, the suicide. And that's why I'm trying not to focus so much on the suicide.
Yeah.
But just because, like I said, I like preventative measures and interventions as opposed to now you're talking to someone in hopes that will help sway you.
Yeah.
So there is a national suicide hotline that somebody would be able to answer the phone and talk to you about whatever it is that's heavy on your heart at the moment. In the hopes that you will then go see the proper resources to help mitigate and manage what's going on in your life at that time. Yes.
All right. And you kind of already start to touch on, some of those local ones. And I can imagine, when it comes to state resources. Yeah. And I know when we talk about state resources, every state obviously different. Like, being from Alabama, from down south, as you're aware, they're not as tuned in to exactly on mental health as, up here. But could you, I know, like I said, you mentioned some. Are there any others on the local state, for the state of New York, that you could think of? Mental health resources wise?
So there is a mental health agency, an association. And that also has a list of mental health resources that are regionally and in Syracuse specifically, and in New York State as a whole. So if you were to travel or go somewhere else and you were still looking for those resources, or if you needed to refer a friend who needed those resources and they don't live in your city, there is a database that you can look up on Google. Really, you can look up mental health resources in Syracuse, New York, and you will find a plethora of resources that are available to you here in Syracuse and in New York. So it would be divided and organized by the region, the state, and the city that you're looking at.
Yeah. And that agency that she's referring to is the Office of Mental Health, for those that aren't, familiar. Yeah, exactly. So now that we talked through the different resources that, we have on a national level, which probably aren't as many because, it's very state focused. Yeah. Can you talk to our listeners about why it's important to seek out mental health counseling, mental health resources and services?
Yes. I think that it's important. I know and I feel that it's important to reach out about your mental health because there are so many things that happen in our life that can catch us by surprise. And there are things in our life that we might not be noticing happening or affecting us. And really seeking out that support in your mental health allows you to sort things out. You might not need advice on certain things, but just having another person to bounce ideas off of and to vent to without there being an ulterior motive or anything that the person would get out of it, besides making sure that you feel you're healthiest mentally. I think that a lot of times when our mental health goes unchecked, it can show up and manifest in different ways in your life. So if you've never had to think about or be checked on your anger management issues, you can easily that can spread and bleed into professional life, that can bleed into your relationships and affect that and not know why. And I think that when you speak to someone about your mental health, it just allows you that space, that safety to explore your thoughts in a way that you would not have been able to before.
Okay. So what we're hearing, guys, ladies and gentlemen, is get out there and find you some mental health.
Okay. It's super important.
It is.
And I feel like also if you don't check your mental health, it's very easy for those responses to trauma and to outside forces that are not really going your way. It's really easy for those responses to get passed down generations. So a lot of times our ancestors had a hard time dealing with anxiety or like depression, and we don't talk about it. And just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean it doesn't come up. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. You just now no longer have the skills to manage it. Yeah. So it seems a little bit more overbearing than it has to. And everybody has depression. Everybody has anxiety. Everybody just handles it differently. Yeah. And the way that you respond to those circumstances has a lot to do with genetics. Yeah. And definitely get those, I agree with you, get those tools, to navigate these traumas, because if we don't properly deal with them, we keen to pass them down. That's where generational curses come from. Exactly. Those ideas that I lived through this, I survived, and I came out all right. So why can't my kid? Exactly. It's okay. Our family cusses a lot because that's just how we communicate. Yeah, because your family is responding to the trauma, and this is how you've been able to cope with it all these years. And so I think a lot of it is just teaching people that is not, there's not just one way to handle something, and just because you've been doing something a certain way all these years does not necessarily mean it's the most healthiest way that you can handle it and go and
Yeah.
deal with it. And your kids are watching and they see and they replicate how you're acting and how you respond to certain things.
Yeah. So I definitely agree, So get y'all some help, y'all. That's what anything else. Exactly. So now I want to shift gears a little bit, and the conversation might get a little spicy from here. I say, look, we love the heat, okay? if you can't handle the heat, stay out the kitchen, what they say. So recently, our school district announced a new initiative with Grant Middle School and probably a few others, where they're starting to open up mental health hubs, if you will, for and services for the students there. Hopefully, that it spreads like it needs to for all our kids. But with this new initiative of getting the mental health services, in these schools and helping these kids at an early age, do you think that that will help deal with those issues that we see them have as adults if they can handle it right now while they're in elementary school and middle school? High school, we will hope it gets handled before that, but even high school level.
Yeah. So the goal is to teach early so that they have the skills to deal with it early. Life happens regardless of how old you are. But the sooner that you have these tools to help manage your stress and your anxiety or your depression, the easier it will be for you to deal with it later on when life hits you hard with it. I think that teaching our kids right now how to like social emotional skills, how to manage their emotions, how to have emotional intelligence, period, I think is super important, especially for a lot of our children here in Syracuse because they deal with so much trauma. With Syracuse being such a poverty-stricken community as a whole, there's a lot of things that go into play with that, and there's a lot of things that our families and our children have to deal with on a day-to-day basis that has become so normalized that a lot of the times they don't recognize the impact it has had on them. So a student might have a friend or a child in the neighborhood that recently got shot. And they still have to go to school the next day, and they still have to learn, and they still have to focus and not be angry or display being upset. And still knowing how to deal with their emotions throughout the day. It's as adults, it's hard for us sometimes to be able to deal with that. So these children don't have the emotional skills yet to be able to manage those emotions. So teaching them, I think, early gives them a leg up. Where they have been brought into a world where they already have a downfall on their side. I think that teaching our children emotional intelligence and allowing them a safe space to explore, like I said, those thoughts, those feelings that they might not have a space to do at home or even in the school building anywhere else, would give students more focus throughout the day, would allow students to safely express how they're feeling without feeling like they have to lash out or feeling like it's a bubble up. Or now we're seeing those behaviors being manifested throughout the day when they're not following directions or when they just they need a break and we don't understand why they need a break. It also teaches them self-advocacy as well, because if they know something is wrong with them, they can express that to somebody else and let them know today's not a good day for me, or telling the teacher, this happened to me at home. I don't know how that's going to affect me, but I know I didn't like it. Gives them a sense of power as well. Because sometimes we can feel overwhelmed by our emotions, especially children. And I think any opportunity that we have to give kids skills that they can use in life is a plus. So I definitely think that this is something, those mental health hubs that we're piloting in certain schools, I think it's super needed. And I'm really excited to see what it's going to do for our families specifically, because just like our children learn from our families, adults are not perfect.
Yeah.
And when kids come in the door doing something different and learning something new, families want to know about it. Families want to be a part of it. Just because they might not know how to be engaged or have the skills to be engaged does not mean they don't have the interest. And when those kids come back in and they come home and they're practicing breathing skills, or they're sitting and thinking before being impulsive, it's going to have our families stop and think too, and think about how they're responding to certain triggers and what are my triggers and what is a trigger. It's just going to get a lot of families thinking about things that they might not have been thinking about before, or it's going to force them to think more about things they should have been thinking about more of. So I think it's a plus, a plus, a plus, a plus.
I definitely do agree. I do think that, because, and something that my principal told me, something that I think we don't realize is just how much trauma, our kids deal with on a daily basis. A lot of them that are maybe be the oldest, well, because I work in a high school for context. So at that, exactly. So like for a lot of my kids in high school, they're probably the oldest sibling, more likely. They're the oldest sibling. Mm-hmm. So they have to step in as kind of like that secondary parent now. And then they have to deal with their own problems and issues. The parents might not be being the parent. And so they got this trauma, and then they have to go to school, and that's their time. Exactly. And that might be their time to decompress, but they can't, because now we in their face talking about get the class, but not realizing, we're just trying to help you get to those goals, and stuff like that. But, so she just saying that, it just reminded me of like, how much our kids go through. And so I do agree that these hubs, because sometimes all you need is just somebody to talk it out with, and stuff like that. It might not even be, you need the emotional regulation is very important, but it might not be at the time you need those type of things. It might just be, I got a lot on my mind and I just need to get it out, And so I think having that.
Or I don't even want to talk about anything. I just need to know that space is available, so that if so, I feel that there is a safe place for me to land. And a lot of times when you don't feel like you even have that, you're being self-sufficient, right? You're doing whatever it is that you can, that you feel like you need to feel better at that time and in that moment. Whereas if you knew that this place was available to you, maybe I can hold off on crashing out just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Maybe because I know at the very least I can go here to crash out, as opposed to there's nowhere else. This is my only option. I got to crash out in class right now. And now you don't ruin the educational experience, not just for yourself, but for everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so much that goes into it. But I think it's impossible for us to expect our children to focus on learning without giving them the tools needed to manage, to deal with their life that they're living with.
Yeah.
They're only in school for 8 hours of the day. Then they have to go back home and live in their life. And I want us to give them skills to be able to happily live that, not just survive, but live that.
Yeah. Live that. To thrive. Not just survive, but to thrive. Yeah. All right. So I know that you're familiar with the school to prison pipeline. It's a very unfortunate pipeline. So do you see mental health services and us implementing mental health services, helping to curb that school to prison pipeline?
Yes, I do. God, that is a layered question, but a straightforward but layered question. When children go up into adults, right? These children who don't have these emotional skills, the emotional intelligence, they grow up. Hopefully, there is an intervention that happens in their life that makes them look at life differently, almost like look at things differently. But you are a product of your environment, and if students are not being taught anything different, if that intervention piece is not happening somewhere in their life, they grow up to be adults who don't have these emotional skills, who don't have emotional intelligence. So that leads to mishaps happening. Now, So weird. How do I explain that? When you don't have the emotional skills needed to navigate life, it almost seems as if things are happening to you and at you.
Mm-hmm.
So you become less of an agent in your own life. And I think that dealing and being responsible for and what's the word? Holding somebody accountable.
Mm-hmm.
When you're accountable for and responsible for your own mental health, it forces you to think of things before you do them. It forces you to think of consequences. It forces you to think of how it affects other people, how it's going to affect your life, the people that love you. Things like that get thought of. I think when you don't have that emotional intelligence, things like that are a second thought instead of being at the forefront of your decision making. And I think when you don't have that emotional intelligence, it's very easy to fall into situations you may not have wanted for yourself initially. Say it that way. You're in a restaurant and you're talking, but you can't tell that this is not a loud restaurant. But you and your friends are really, really loud. Now you're louder than everybody else in the restaurant. Now it's a problem, and that's caused something else that didn't have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional intelligence would have told you to read the room. Emotional intelligence you would have known that there's certain establishments that are appropriate for this behavior and what's not appropriate for this behavior. How to talk to people, how to talk to people to get the response that you're looking for, as opposed to just talking to be heard. I think these are life skills that are beneficial to people in general, and I think that without learning those skills, it's very easy to fall into a life of crime. For one, on another note, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have that emotional intelligence, your behavior can get grouped in with aggression, with dismissive behavior, with nonchalant attitudes. It can be dismissed as you not caring or having a total disregard for other people's feelings and emotions and how what you're doing is affecting them. And I think with that, it can create a perception of you and your personality, and who you are as a person in general. And with that perception, and with you not feeling like you have agency over your own life, I think other people can see that and just label you as they want to, which will make it easy for you to, when crimes do happen, fit you into a category. And in that category, you are now in the pipeline. So I think there is a connect between learning emotional skills and the pipeline, because I think it has to do with the perception of you. I feel like I'm not answering this question in the best way I want to. I feel like I'm not answering that in the best way that I want to.
So to make a long story short, you do believe that it'll definitely curb it, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
it would help at least stop in its tracks for a lot of our Black kids.
Yeah. Because, like you said, it'll teach they'll regulate how to regulate your emotions, Because I feel like seeing it on a high school level, a lot of our kids, and it's something I've observed, like a lot of my kids, they do have a tendency to crash out or be quick to fight, and I'm like, and they're fighting for no reason, because somebody says something about them or, because some girl sleeping with her man or, whatever the case may be, it's something trivial. And it's kind of like, as an adult, exactly. And as an adult, you can kind of laugh at it. But like, looking back, when I was in high school, I was in middle school, I used to think those were the most important things going on, was in my life. So understanding that, hey, life is so much bigger than that. And you don't have to give your energy to that. So it definitely, like to your point, I think it would definitely help to curb it because, you're learning, okay, she's talking about whatever. He ain't my man for real, it's not worth exactly. And I don't have to ruin my life for 5 minutes of anger, for whatever the case may be. I don't have to ruin what I got set up for me, you know.
Right. So let me go to my safe space, or let me go to my adult, or let me go to my toolbox, the things that I've been taught on how to manage my stress and my anxiety, as opposed to just lashing out and doing my first instinct, which is knock you out.
Yeah.
Because now I'm upset and I want you to know I'm upset.
Yeah.
I think it will teach students the actual power that they have. Because like I said, when life is hitting you and hitting you and hitting you, and you have certain skills to manage life, it can seem like your feelings are overbearing and you don't know how to manage through life, and life just keeps happening. I think going this route gives them advocacy for themselves and also agency. You have control over your emotions. You do have control over what you do next and how you respond to things. And from that, you can have a little bit more control of the situation as opposed to feeling like, oh, I hit her because she yelled at me and now you'll be mad at me. Well, baby, there's other ways that you could have handled that. And we want to teach kids that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Definitely agree with you. So now I wanna keep on this kind of prison pipeline now. Now we're in prison. Somebody that's incarcerated. Our carceral system when it comes to mental health is just non-existent. There is nothing there at all. And so, you know, but a lot of our incarcerated individuals that are incarcerated, you know, they have so many mental health diagnoses. They have so many things going on mentally. But they, like I said, they don't have they have inadequate, you know, help. They don't have the resources they need in the prison system. And so I want to just talk about, you know, do you think that we should switch from, you know, it being an internal thing with the Department of Corrections to maybe like an individual third party oversees mental health in our just the criminal legal system, and they're independent of the Department of Corrections? Do you think like something like that will help improve and give us the needed improvements we need for those services?
I think that everybody, like I said, has anxiety, depression, stress. I think it all depends on how you manage that stress and anxiety and depression. I think that having an individual, what did you call it?
An incarcerated individual?
No. The agency.
Like an independent third party?
Yeah. So I think that having an independent third party could be beneficial. If anything, I feel like it would be focused intervention as opposed to a generalized intervention, which I think could be happening in the prison system today. I think you could still run into the issue of staffing. I don't think that there are enough mental health staff to make sure services were delivered in an effective manner. A lot of times caseloads are through the roof, like I said, because everybody has their stuff that they're dealing with and then they're trying to maneuver through. So a caseload could easily be between 30 to 200 people. And that again depends on your staffing for that specific agency. Being that prisons are privately owned, and the current mental health facilities being adjoined with the prison system, I think there could be, most likely is some monetary incentive. And I think that when you take out the monetary incentive, that's where you really can get to the help. But then again, staffing. If there's no monetary incentive, how are you staffing these programs and making it happen? So, that's a tough one. I do not have the answer to that. I think mental health, because of the stigma around mental health, making sure mental health is supported by everybody can get messy for, I don't even want to say that because that can discourage people from getting mental health, and I don't want to do that. The question is, do I think that having a third party would be more beneficial to our mental health patients in prison than having a joint mental health agency that is already in the prison system? Correct?
Basically, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I know for like example, to give you guys know I was away, got activated by the military. And so I was inside the prison systems, and I can at least speak for the facility that I was in when it came to mental health. They had the Office of Mental Health had people that were there, so it was another state agency, within within that facility and stuff like that, which was a state ran prison and stuff like that. So it was that collaboration between two different state entities and stuff like that. So I guess I'm thinking if we had somebody like, for example, like Liberty, or one of those other ones that has like, they have the therapy. Yeah, exactly. They outsource it instead of using the state agencies. First of all, that would help cut costs, but also maybe because they have, I'm not gonna say better resources, but I do feel like they might have the adequate resources to handle that.
I think they would have the adequate resources to handle that. Again, with staffing. So, for example, Liberty, if they were to outsource their therapists to go into prisons, that would, at the very least, double their caseload, right? So the services, it would either double their caseload or they would have to hire more staff to specifically work with that population of people.
Yeah.
Right now, in the city of Syracuse, I don't want to speak for any other city, I don't want to speak for any other state.
Yeah.
In the city of Syracuse, we do not have a plethora of therapists. So if we were to use an outsourced therapy or a therapist agency, we would run into the problem of adequate service being delivered. Yeah, they'd be on a caseload, and hopefully they would get the same services as if it was a shorter caseload. But if you have a lot of people on your caseload, it's just difficult. It's just hard. And then the least amount of people that you have on the team is, you might have a cap of the number of people you can have on your caseload, but you're not taking people off of your caseload because you have too many. So I think with services as such and other therapy agencies, I think the goal is to help as many people as possible while still delivering adequate and efficient service to people, so that nobody's getting, excuse my language, a shitty end of the stick, and everybody's getting their mental health dealt with in a serious manner.
I guess now I'm thinking, that we talked about, if we keep on this outsourcing path, I'm taking that screen a little bit. So we're on the outsourcing pathway. What if, like, because we talked about staffing. So what if the state incentivizes, so if you dedicate a certain amount of like staff for our prisons, we'll give you like certain tax cuts. Or we even have this string in the budget that we can give to you, and you can apply for that and get that. Do you think that could kind of help with that staffing? Because now it's incentivized to get therapists into those positions.
I think that if they had an incentivized program to help people get degrees in that field, that would be great. I think the issue is we don't have enough certified people to do the job here. And I think that maybe not specifically for any community, actually. It's very important for whoever's going to be working with that community to do a lot of research on the community that they're going to be working with. And personally, from my experience, I think it's beneficial to have lived with or engaged with in some sort that community so that you can understand the needs of that people. So your question was?
Oh, we got off the question. Is it
outsourcing?
Yeah, basically outsourcing
and staffing and
that was basically with that improve. I say, look, we went away from that question. We started pulling this went down a rabbit hole. No, it's fine. It's fine. I do think we maybe got adequate for that one. Okay, so now I want to shift and ask this question of: do you think the state should play a role? And if so, if they should play a role, what kind of role should they be playing when it comes to ensuring that there is mental health resources for their citizens?
But oh, Lord have mercy.
So should they play a role, first of all, in ensuring
The state
there's,
in general.
yeah. So New York State, but even the United States, should the government play a role in making sure that there are mental health resources available for their citizens? And if they should play a role, what kind of role? Like, what should that look like? Should they be more active in like determining, kind of like how we got Medicaid and Medicare? Should they be active in determining like, hey, everybody needs to get it, or maybe, or should they be more of a in partnership with private companies? Like, what? How should that role look?
I think first thing first is the stigma around mental health would have to be shunned.
Mm-hmm.
I think in order to advocate, because in my hearts of all hearts, I feel like mental health should be free.
Mm-hmm.
I think that mental health should be tied into healthcare. Period. Because mind is connected to the body. That is of one. That is of you. You can't be healthy in one without being healthy in the other. For the whole unit. So I feel like it would be ideal if the government and the state was like, okay, everybody needs to focus on their mental health. Here are resources. Here's free this. Here's free that. Here's free that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be free. How do we get people to do it? How do we get people to take it? How do we give the buy-in for people to take it seriously? And I think that's really, really where it starts. You can offer things for free out your neck. But if nobody really sees the importance of it, it will just sit there. And financial support is a big barrier for mental health a lot of the times. For therapy specifically, it can get pretty pricey. But I do think that not incentivizing, but I do wonder if providing that free option to families and to people in general would make it more normalized, as opposed to it being only for specific types of people, like people who can afford it or people who need it so bad they have to have it. I think that it needs to be looked at more as everybody needs it and everybody could use it. Not everybody needs it, but everybody could use it. And if you need it, here's the resource. If you don't, tell a friend. And I think there's not enough of telling your friend to get help, to get the help that they need going on, which is why the stigma of mental health is still negative and around. So it would be great if this, I think the state should have a hand in it. How do we get the people to get a hand in it? I think that's my biggest qualm, and that's what I'm trying to solve myself. Of how do I get people hooked on the idea of making sure their mental health is okay,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure it's okay for you, for your family, and for the future of your people in general. Because again, like I said, how you react to these stressors and this trauma will get passed down to your seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight
Yeah.
like that. It's literally embedded in DNA. There's studies that show that I'm not going to speak on the father's part, but internally for the mother's part, biologically, there are things that happen to the fetus when mom is responding to stressors in certain ways. And those responses get passed down genetically to the offspring, on top of the mirror transmitters seeing and copying everything that the mom is doing. So not only is it biologically imprinted in them, but they're also watching the behavior and copying and copy paste everything that you're doing. So you're creating another version of you. So in all aspects.
Come on, research. Look, that's a future doctor right there. Okay. All right. So now I want to talk about, universal healthcare. That's such a hot topic, that we that I ain't gonna say we as in everybody, but some people talk about, especially in America. Okay, we need some look, because we need some healthcare. All right, look, okay, we dying left and right. We need some help. Exactly. We need to go to see a doctor. Okay, that what we need. That's what we really need to do. Okay, find you a primary care provider and go get your annual checkups. Okay, because we are dying. Annual. meaning every year, okay? Make sure it's routine because we out here dying. But so yeah, we talk about, healthcare, and I want to talk about, should we loop in, mental health care into that universal healthcare picture?
Yes.
All right then.
Just period.
Okay. So when we talk about universal healthcare, so I guess I wanna see where we split the baby at. So do you think it should be the federal government's responsibility to loop it in, or should it be the states on like the state by state level to loop in mental health services in the universal health care talk?
So are you saying, oh my God, oh Lord have mercy? I guess that's scary, right? Because I can't help but compare it to reproductive health, women's rights,
Yeah.
and everybody doesn't have the same view on that.
Yeah.
And for me, it should be the same view for everybody. Just not in the sense of you should and shouldn't believe this and that, but in having control of somebody else's body
Yeah.
should turn people off the wrong way. Same way as, in my belief, not supporting your citizens' mental health should rub you the wrong way. I also think that it allows them a sense of control as well. I think that when you have people who don't know what's going on with them and don't understand the importance of finding out what's wrong with them, it's easy to control people and manipulate their behaviors and their thoughts. And I think what would be the benefit of everybody having mental health if you can't control them, right? So get your mental health checked out so that you are not easily controlled by these people and manipulated.
Period. Get it checked out, okay? Don't let these folks fool y'all like that. So since we're in the realm of hypotheticals and we're talking about, mental health, universal health care, all these good things. If we were to have universal health care, I know you kind of touched on, like when you said it should rub people the wrong way, at least. Yeah. So if we are to include mental health into the universal health care talk, should the burden of paying it, like, should taxpayers bear that burden?
If it's going to be for everybody, it should be us. I agree, and I think that.
But what if they don't use it?
People pay for taxes that they don't use. Okay? Listen.
Okay.
It's already being paid for. And it's not like we're putting money towards a building we will never see. These are services that are provided to you. If you use them, you use them. Everybody can get a license. I don't mean everybody drives. Crazy analogy, but I'm gonna use it.
Okay. Okay.
I think it will benefit everybody, and if health is going to be included in it, mental health, it only makes sense to include that as well.
Okay.
Just like dental, eyes, your brain should be included.
Okay. Clock that. All right, before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you would like to share with listeners?
Just pay attention to yourself, listen to yourself, know where you stand with your mental health, understand your triggers, understand your responses to those triggers, and try to be mindful with how therapy can be for everyone. Therapy can be for everyone, and it's not just for people who are seeking support for a specific thing. If you would like somebody to talk to about something and you don't want to feel like you're burdening somebody you're close to, or you don't want to tell a stranger that you feel like doesn't really have to do with anything to do with your mental health or what's going on with you, therapists are there for just that reason. They give you somebody else to just bounce your ideas off of and give you that free space to just vent openly. I think I will leave it with that. I think so.
All right, thank you so much. All right, y'all. So we worked so very hard to make sure our mental health is built up. We talked about emotional regulation. We talked about a lot of things this episode. And I just want to say before I continue on that I have missed you guys so truly. I'm so glad to be back, even though I'm going to hit y'all with some bad news because I am back temporarily. And so now that I said we worked hard to keep their mental health, I want you to keep, working hard on your mental health. Go seek therapy if you need it. It's okay to talk about those things, We don't have to live our trauma. We don't have to let the trauma define us. So go and get the help that you need. Go see that lady. Okay, she's gonna ask you a million questions, but you give her a million answers, okay?
Or man.
Okay, exactly. Okay. Look, go see them folks though. And so anyways, like I said, I'll be back temporarily because I wanted to use this episode to officially serve as our season finale for season 1. So this is going to be the end of season 1. We're going to take a break and then we'll come back season 2. I'm so excited. We have so many interesting topics to discuss in season 2. We're going to come back and we're going to hit it hard. Let's get warm. Where the Baby's Code At is hosted by Aldra Cade. It is recorded, edited, and produced by Aldra Cade